Hi! In this video I'll show you how I made this gorgeous skirt with boning. For the pattern you will need food foil, duct tape, scissors and a marker. Start by wrapping your waist and a butt with the food foil. And make sure that there are no holes. Then add the duct tape to make it more sturdy, what will allow us to draw our lines. It should look like this. For marking of the lines I decided to put on a bustier and follow the lines from there, but generally you just want to split it into 4 pieces per half. And now it's time to break free. I only marked half of the pattern because I will mirror it. Once we separate our pieces, we can move on to mock-up, for which you need the pattern, mock-up fabric, in my case it's bed sheets, scissors, markers, sewing machine and a zipper. I won't go too much into detail with how I sew it because the steps are very similar to what is coming next. Once I was happy with the mock-up, I took it apart and transferred the pieces onto the fabric, and decided to add a bit of seam allowance to make it taller. Then I cut the pieces out. Because my fabric is pretty wrinkly, I decided to iron the pieces. Once all of them got nice and straight, I fused them with iron-on interfacing that I cut into the same pieces. Interfacing will help to make it more sturdy. It's time to add the lace. In this case, I decided to pin in the pieces and cut them out with the lace again. I left the pins in and then I brought the piece to the sewing machine to top stitch around the perimeter to keep the lace from moving. Once all pieces were covered with the lace, I started to assemble them together. It's very important that you remember the order of your pieces. Now stitch them together. When all the pieces are connected, it's time to iron out the seams. Make sure you follow the arrows. When ironing the face of the fabric with the lace, in order to protect it I used baking paper. Once the seams are pressed, I'll start marking 1.5 cm from the top and from the bottom for the boning. I'm using this plastic boning. The length of the boning is the length between the 2 markings. This is how it should look like when you cut it. To keep the boning in the place, I stitch it onto the seam allowance. Because the boning is not straight, I'll give it a bit of love with iron. Now it's time to top stitch the seams. With this step, the upper part of the skirt is done, so now we are moving on to the bottom. Here I measure the length of the bottom part. In this part, I'll be using the measurement for a full circle skirt, and I asked Google for the help. By placing the circumference into the box, I get to calculate a radius that I will need to draft onto the pattern. To make the full circle skirt, imagine that this is your fabric. At first, fold it in half horizontally and then fold it in half vertically. Just a quick recap. Mark the radius at the upper right corner. Then decide the length of your skirt and trace it. Cut the skirt out. Open it and you are done. Time to do it on the fabric where I'm using my mock-up piece. Also, don't forget to add seam allowance before cutting it out. I duplicated the piece because I'll be using one of them for lining. I repeated the process with the lace, but I just made it a little shorter so it stands out better. So far so good. Here I'm cutting out open the skirt from normal fabric and also the lace fabric in order to attach it to the upper part of the skirt. I pin it down and use my trustworthy sewing machine to stitch it together. Then I top stitched it so it lays nicer. I also stitched the edges of the lace and the green fabric together and adjusted where was necessary. It's time to add the zipper. I'm using invisible zipper, which requires a special foot presser. With adding zipper, I also closed the whole skirt. Here I'm marking and cutting out the pieces for the lining. I assembled the lining as if it was a mock-up without the boning and zipper. Then I connect face pieces against each other and stitch on the top and on the sides where the zipper is. Then I carefully cut away the corners without cutting the stitch, so it won't be bulky once we turn it inside out. Now turn it inside out. I'm helping myself by gently pulling on the zipper. Once that was done, I top stitched the top of the skirt and also 1 centimeter from the zipper. For the bottom of the skirt, I folded the edges of the skirt inside and top stitched them as well. And that was it. Thank you for watching and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!